soul leads to a demented mind. These wicked minds create a life of pain, death, and torture, often making one ponder the capacity of a human being and the depravity and acts a person can commit on their victims. As for these three men, the abuse and instability in their lives would create horrendous monsters. But sadly, these monsters were real.
Perfect. I'm gonna make you smile, man.
In 1948, Clarnell Elizabeth Kemper would give birth to her only son, Edmund. As a child, Ed lived a dysfunctional life with his family, often showing antisocial behavior and cruelty to animals. Possession and control were pleasure to him, even at a young age. Through his own admission, some of his favorite games to play as a child were the gas chamber and the electric chair, where a sibling of his would pretend to execute him, and he would seize on the floor until he was dead. In interviews following his arrest, Kemper made more troubling admissions to his childhood, including the near-death experiences caused twice by his sister, being molested, and stalking a second-grade teacher, watching outside her windows at night while he carried a bayonet his father owned. Following his parents' divorce, Kemper would continue showcasing behavior indicative of a serial killer, often exemplified by things such as antisocial behavior, animal cruelty, abuse from family in forms of mental, physical, and sexual, bedwetting, and a fascination of fire. Eventually, Kemper went to live with his paternal grandparents, who Kemper described as senile, and that his grandmother often made him feel emasculated. Clearly, his hatred for women would soon turn into something much more sinister, and those early signs of a future serial killer turned into a reality, as Ed Kemper would kill his grandparents at their home in 1964, at the age of 15. When asked why, Kemper simply said, "I wanted to see what it felt like to kill Grandma." Following an argument, Ed shot his grandmother Maud with a rifle 3 times, including a shot to her head, and then proceeded to stab her several times for reasons still unknown. When his grandfather came home, he was shot in the driveway, where Kemper was left waiting for the police while telling his mother what he did. After his arrest, Kemper was sent to the Atascadero State Hospital, a maximum security facility that houses mentally ill convicts, of which Kemper was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. For 5 years, Kemper remained at Atascadero, where the hospital stated he showed no expression of delusion, no bizarre thinking, and that he was extremely intelligent, recording an IQ above 135. The staff believed the diagnosis previously given to Kemper was wrong, and instead, he was later diagnosed as having a mild personality trait disorder with being passive-aggressive. If it wasn't clear though, Kemper was a master manipulator, becoming a model prisoner by all reports, only for more killings to come. On his 21st birthday, Kemper was released to his mother in 1969, also getting his juvie record expunged just 3 years later, the last report on him saying things like,
"If I were to see this patient without having any history available, or getting any history from him, I would think that we're dealing with a very well-adjusted young man who had initiative, intelligence, and who was free of any psychiatric illnesses."
After attending community college and being rejected to join the police force due to his large 6'9" frame, Kemper later found employment for the state of California, but the troubles at home continued with his mother, as often, arguments and screaming could be heard by the neighbors. 1 year before his juvenile record was expunged, Kemper was injured in 1971, injuring his arm in a motorcycle accident and receiving over $15,000 as compensation, of which he used to purchase a Ford Galaxy, the vehicle that would see the ending of far too many innocent lives. For the next 2 years, Kemper was peaceful, picking up over 150 hitchhikers on his drives, plenty of which Kemper admitted there was zero homicidal or sexual thoughts of. These urges he called his little zapples, and soon he came to act on these urges, as they began to grow into a nightmare and a reality. This nightmare would include the sick and sadistic murder of 8 people, including the decapitation of his own mother. Ed Kemper, later dubbed the Co-Ed Killer, believed his victims to be surrogates for his final target, his abuser, his mother. saying that the young women deserved it, blaming them, stating they would flaunt in his face they could do anything and get away with it. If this sounds familiar, we too commonly hear similar beliefs from incel culture. Women are to blame for all of men's problems. Therefore, the pain and suffering and hate on women is justified by this disgusting mindset. From 1972 to 73, Kemper killed 5 college female students, 1 high school female student, his mother, and his mother's friend, Mary Ann Pesci, Anita Lucchesa, Aiko Koo, Cindy Shaw, Rosalind Thorpe, Alice Liu, Clarnell Strandberg, and Sarah Hallett. His first victims were Mary Ann and Anita, 2 18-year-old college students from Fresno State University, who were handcuffed, strangled, stabbed, and their bodies so mutilated it left cops in shock. Kemper committed vile acts, and even engaged in acts of sexual intercourse with the corpses' severed heads, later dismembering the rest of them to get rid of the evidence. Sadly, after murdering them and driving home, Kemper was stopped by a cop who failed to notice the bodies in the trunk of his car. After spotting, he had a broken taillight, and just 5 months later, Kemper would take his next victim, Aiko Koo, later stuffing her body in a suitcase after killing her, even admitting to admiring her body in the suitcase like a fisherman would admire a trophy fish, doing so after a few drinks from the bar. 4 months later, in 1973, Kemper moved back in with his mother, later burying the head of his next victim in his mother's garden, letting the severed head stare up at her bedroom window, as Ed said his mother always wanted people to be looking at her. Cindy Shaw was just 18. Less than a month later, Kemper would kidnap and kill 2 more students, Rosalind Thorpe and Alice Liu. This was after local universities and campuses were alerted to the suspected serial killer in the area, kidnapping young college-age women who were hitchhiking. Advice was given, only to accept rides from vehicles with official university stickers and permits, of which Ed Kemper was able to obtain, as his mother worked at the UC Santa Barbara. In similar manner, Kemper would have sex with the deceased bodies after mutilating them. When asked why he would decapitate his victims, Kemper said the head was a trophy. The head is where everything is at. The brain, eyes, mouth, that's the person. I remember being told as a kid, you cut the head off and the body dies. Well, that's not quite true. There's a lot left in the girl's body without the head. Finally, on April 20th of 1973, Kemper killed his mother with a claw hammer. His final words to her that night before she went to bed, "Good night." Kemper humiliated the corpse, throwing darts at her dismembered head, screaming at it for hours, even cutting out her tongue and vocal cords. Unable to destroy them in the garbage disposal, Kemper even found humor in that, calling it appropriate as much as she'd bitched and screamed over so many years. After a few drinks at a nearby bar, Kemper would invite his mother's friend over, where he would strangle and kill Sarah Hallett before leaving a note for the cops and driving over 1,000 miles to Colorado that night. Armed with multiple guns, Kemper became paranoid, believing to be the suspect of a massive nationwide manhunt. However, after hearing no news, Kemper called the police to report the murders as he claimed he didn't feel a point to kill anymore. The high had subsided. The thought of murder lost its purpose to him, with his mother dead. After calling the police and not being believed, Kemper called a second time and spoke to an officer he knew, later admitting to his crimes. And soon, he was captured and indicted on 8 counts of first-degree murder in May of 1973. After 2 suicide attempts and a plea of insanity, Kemper was found legally sane, fully cognizant of all the actions he took, including mutilation, strangulation, rape, and cannibalism. In November, he was found guilty on all counts. His defense of insanity, including blacking out during the murders and having 2 different personalities taking over his body, was unsuccessful, and Ed Kemper was sentenced to 7 years to life for each victim. Sadistically, Kemper wanted death by torture, and knowing his favorite games to play as a kid adds a more sick level to this. Re-diagnosed with antisocial, narcissistic, and schizotypal personality disorders, Kemper again became a model prisoner. In his time, Kemper narrated over 5,000 books for charity programs and even assisted with evaluation appointment schedulings for other prisoners. But even being a model prisoner wasn't enough to get him paroled, as he remains in prison, wheelchair-bound, and suffering from heart disease and diabetes. Still considered a high risk to reoffend as of 2024, murdering 10 people in total, Edmund Kemper will live his miserable life in jail. and die. Many interviews were made with Kemper, including some of which where I got these quotes and statements from. In addition, movies about him have also been made, including the 2025 release, Ed Kemper, which I just watched on Tubi. Also, Ed Kemper was too a primary inspiration for the movie serial killer Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. And like Buffalo Bill, Ed Kemper will die a villain, and who has come to be known as the Co-Ed Killer.